In 1957, American audiences were introduced to a movie that starred Andy Griffith, Patricia Neal, and Walter Matthau, and it was directed by Elia Kazan. And that movie was called A Face in the Crowd. It's actually based on a short story by Bud Schulberg called Your Arkansas Traveler. The film follows Larry Lonesome Rhodes, a drifter who is discovered by a producer of a small-town radio program. Lonesome is played by Andy Griffith, and the producer of the radio show is Patricia Neal. Andy Griffith's character of Rhodes immediately rises to great fame and influence on national television. This character that Andy Griffith plays is based on a group of 3 people, one being Will Rogers Jr., the other being Arthur Godfrey, and then there's Tennessee Ernie Ford that's in the mix too. The film actually launched Andy Griffith into stardom, but it got real mixed reviews originally on its release. Patricia Neal is a huge standout in this film, and this is after she had a return to the big screen after a 4-year absence from Hollywood. And this absence was really due to her much publicized affair with Gary Cooper, who was actually married at the time, and this caused her to have a nervous breakdown when the affair ended. Miss Neal was cast in the film after Elia Kazan saw her in a production of Cat on a Hot Tin Roof, and this was a play that he originally directed on Broadway. The majority of the movie was filmed at the Biograph Studios that was built in 1912. The studio was sold numerous times throughout the years, and it finally burned down in 1980. This is where they did all the interior shots of the film. One of the most involved location shoots that they did was in Piggott, Arkansas, and this revolved around the fair and baton twirling competition scenes. They actually employed 5,000 extras, and they had to feed and pay them an hourly wage of $1 an hour in mid-August for a day's work. They rounded up 60 baton twirlers from northeast Arkansas and southeastern Missouri, and they got musicians from 6 different high school bands that they assembled to play there. Lee Remick, who stars in the movie and makes her debut appearance on the big screen, reportedly spent 2 weeks in the small Arkansas town with a teen twirler named Amanda Robinson and her family. She spent the whole time working on her twirling and her local accent, but on quite a few of the baton twirling scenes, they used a double. Elia Kazan talks about what a great experience it was filming on location in this small northeastern Arkansas town. He said that they became completely involved in the community and that they felt like they were among friends the whole time they were there. He said that it was a terrific experience right from the beginning. The people they met and the insights they got just gave them a privilege of being inside this society that otherwise would have been impossible to get into. He said that everywhere he walked in the small town, people were following him. Another filming at the Piggott location, they had to bring in approximately 380 dogs from Missouri and Arkansas for the scene where Rhodes makes his mass action call for his audiences to take their dogs to the home of the local sheriff who is running for a higher office. He tells the people that they ought to see if their candidate is worthy of the office of dog catcher. Now, the Memphis scenes kind of parallel the popularity of Elvis Presley, who was actually a national star by 1956. And he had also begun filming Love Me Tender the same month that they were filming in Piggott, Arkansas. The director and the screenwriter spent months researching the advertising world. They even gained access to ad agency meetings in order to understand the way the Madison Avenue approach shapes the thinking of the American public. They also went to Washington, D.C. to observe the political arena as well. And that's where they spent time and interviewed future President Lyndon Johnson, and they studied the way he walked, talked, and presented himself in private and public. Now, to really underscore the sway of the television media in America, the director incorporated several cameos by well-known media personalities, and those included Sam Levinson, John Cameron Swayze, Mike Wallace, Earl Wilson, and Walter Winchell. The patented medicine pill that you see throughout the film is called Vitajex, and its maker is called General Hainsworth, and it draws a very close parallel to the patent medicine tonic called Hadacol, and its own maker, Louisiana State Senator Dudley J. LeBlanc. The film was released in 1957, and the Hadacol enterprise collapsed into a financial scandal in 1951. The Vitajex tablets that Lonesome Rhodes encourages people to buy have 6 grains of dextrose, 5 grains of an inert material, 2.5 grains of caffeine, and 3.5 grains of aspirin. That's roughly the equivalent of a 16-ounce cafe latte and a few baby aspirins. 2 of the cast members had genuine ties to the country music field. Rod Brasfield was a popular Grand Ole Opry comedian in the 1950s. He was known for his onstage performances and onstage comic banter with the legendary comic from the Grand Ole Opry, Minnie Pearl. Big Jeff Bess, who portrayed the sheriff, was a Nashville-based country music performer on the radio station WLAC there. He led a group called Big Jeff and his Radio Playboys, which recorded for Dot Records and included guitarist Grady Martin. He was for a time the husband of Tootsie Bess, longtime owner of the Nashville's famous downtown bar Tootsie's Orchid Lounge, which was a hangout for country entertainers. Now, before Elia Kazan ever met Andy Griffith, he became familiar with him from Andy Griffith's comedy monologue records, and the most famous of those was the record What It Was Football. This recording enjoyed constant airplay on Southern radio stations in the early 1950s, and this is what basically got Andy Griffith noticed by people. Andy Griffith went on to be in the Broadway play No Time for Sergeants, and he gained more exposure there. Elia Kazan got impressed with him and decided to meet with him on the possibility of him starring in the role as Lonesome. They met at Gallagher's Steakhouse on 52nd Street in Manhattan, and that's basically where Andy Griffith put on the performance of his life that actually led to him being the mega star that he developed into. Andy Griffith asked the filmmaker if he had heard of Oral Roberts, and Elia Kazan said that he hadn't heard of him. Andy Griffith grabbed Elia Kazan's head in his hands, and he reenacted one of Oral Roberts' faith-healing sessions. He started screaming, "Heal, heal," and he went into this for quite a while. This was all it took. Elia Kazan gave him the part of Lonesome Rhodes. And Andy Griffith just tears this performance up. I mean, he is all over the place in this, from these sullen moments to these high-intensity moments. You can really see in this film what a range he had as far as an actor goes. He's not just the timid, quiet sheriff that you see in the town of Mayberry on the Andy Griffith Show. They would even set old chairs and stuff around for Andy Griffith to kind of get warmed up with as he gradually got wound up into a scene and started yelling and screaming, as you see him do many times in this film. It's also said that the director poured a lot of whiskey down him because he really had to get him to get outside his normal state and become basically mean. something that Andy Griffith was not very good at in a sober state. Upon its original release, A Face in the Crowd gained a real mixed response from the critics. But over the decades, the critical opinion of the film has warmed considerably. This film is fun to watch, but if you're expecting to see the normal Andy Griffith, you better look out. This will change the way that you watch the Andy Griffith Show in the future. You just can't get past it. You see Andy Griffith in a totally different light. But this just shows you how good of an actor he actually was. Take a look back at this film. If you've never seen it, I guarantee you'll enjoy it. This is a well-done film, and you see a different side of Andy than the side you saw in Mayberry. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll continue to chase the classics.